Ama Ata Aidoo, née Christina Ama Aidoo, was born 23rd of March in the year 1942. She's a Ghanaian author, poet, playwright, and academic. She was the Minister of Education under the Jerry Rawlings administration. In the year 2000, she established the Mbasem Foundation to promote and support the work of African women writers. Some other sources by Megan Parent Brown University and Africa Who is Who third edition stated that
I would
she was
want to think
born
that
on
some people
March
liked me.
31st,
You know what I mean?
1940.
I think that the people whose opinions I cared for liked me. Others didn't. But you see, in a process like the one we had initiated, there were, and I believe there still may be, different forces at work. And I think that it was very necessary that at the time I make myself recognize that that time was not good, for maybe what I flattered myself I knew the country ought to have. And I also think that in a way it was also good that the government could recognize this, that I was just too much for everybody at the time.
The Aidoo Snyder Book Prize, awarded by the Women's Caucus of the African Studies Association for an outstanding book published by a woman that prioritizes African women's experiences, is named in honor of Ata Aidoo and of Margaret C. Snyder, who was the founding director of UNIFEM.
Here I am essentially a writer, and second, essentially a mother. Whereas before, I was essentially a university lecturer or a minister. In fact, being a mother didn't even come third place. Like, I think part of the problem behind why I had to leave was that my daughter was living with a public somebody. And considering also that, I'm a single parent, her father wasn't even alive somewhere.
Well, I can always put my S.
My life in Zimbabwe and my life in Ghana just before I left. I mean, like the two opposite sides of opposite poles.
Ooh. You should. Oh, I shouldn't have brought you that.
I come from this region of Ghana, this coastal region of Ghana. In Ghana, we call it the Central Region. I come from two villages. Traditionally, as an Akan, I'm supposed to come from my mother's village. But you see, although traditionally that is supposed to be my home because it is my mother's ancestral home, I have never lived there. I was not born there. I was not bred there. So we know it as home where we own some land, but really, when I say my village, I really normally mean my father's village. That's where I come from. My father was an Odikro. An Odikro is like a divisional, what they would call a divisional chief. He was the head of the village, and he also held a state title. So he was an Ohene, a proper one.
Aidoo was born 23rd of March 1942 in Saltpond in the central region of Ghana. She was raised in a Fanti royal household, the daughter of Nana Yao Fama, chief of Ebiezi Chiakor, and Mame Abesema. She grew up under the oppression of resurgent neocolonialism as a result of British aggression during the late 19th century that was taking place in her homeland. Her grandfather was murdered by a neocolonialist, and the tragedy, in turn, brought her father's attention to the importance of education and securing it for his children and the families of the village on the history and events of the era. This led him to open up the first school in their village and influenced Adu to attend the Wesley Girls High School, where she first decided she wanted to be a writer. Adu attended Wesley Girls High School in Cape Coast from the year
We had the most
1961
incredible
to
childhood.
1964.
When we were growing up, my father always made it quite clear that he wanted us to go to school. And so before my time, children from our village were walking to the state capital to go to school. And my father said, no, this was not right. The children were doing too much walking to learn that when they arrived in, they got to school, they would be too tired. So he insisted on having our school in the village. And when he opened the school, I remember when he was giving his speech, he said, and I've quoted this all over, all the time, that, people might ask him why there were so many girls, almost as many girls as there were boys, including his own daughter. So then he quoted a famous statement by a famous Ghanaian called Agre of Africa. And he said, when you educate a man, you educate an individual. When you educate a woman, you educate a nation. And I genuinely think that this kind of orientation has been part of my own outlook on the world, in the sense that I had, right from the beginning, we are not Islamic, we the Akans, most of us are not. So that it is only later, when I came to even places like the university, where suddenly you are confronting things like the negative attitude to women. Nobody told me when I was growing up that you can't do this because you are a woman. You can't do that because... No, it didn't exist in my background. My mother and my father, they were very easy. According to our people, you inherit your name and your soul from your father. But you inherit land, security from your mother. So this kind of balance...
All right, so that's a bit of a documentary on the legend, Ama Ata Aidoo. We're celebrating here this morning on this segment, going to get into some conversations about her, understand a bit more of who she was and meant to some people who knew her better than we do here. Fema, what are your thoughts on the little that we've seen?
Well, I think that Professor Ama Ata Aidoo is a personality who is worth celebrating. As I mentioned earlier, for me, coming from a very strong arts background, yeah. I know her works, I have studied her works, and I know how we revere her in that space, and by extension, in academia, and I think that she is one woman who really stands tall when it comes to the role that women have played. She's a fantastic dramatist. Nobody can take that away from her. Yeah. And considering that she was the first woman to have her works published, I think this is really an inspiration. And we really have to pay attention to some of these things. And I'm very excited and happy that she was one person who was well celebrated. We really paid attention to who she was. I mean, her works and everything. I don't think there's any art school, in Ghana and beyond that has not really studied her work. I mean, her plays like Anoa, Dilemma of a Ghost, these are very popular. Everybody who has been through School of Performing Arts, I dare say, has studied these. I mean, every year we were staging her plays, and I think that it just gives me fond memories of my days in University of Ghana, and I'm excited that I can also sit here and talk about the impact that her works and her personality, has had on most of us, especially young women in the arts.
Yeah. Well, we have in studio, and we would like to let me introduce him. He is an educationist, founder and CEO of the Gate Institute, author, columnist, is a trainer of teachers. At that level, it's a different conversation altogether. He's a trainer of teachers, and also one of our esteemed judges of the Literacy Challenge as well, I might add. And he's here. He's Mr. Anis Hafa. Good morning. It's good to have you here.
My pleasure.
Yeah, why?
I like this new place.
Okay.
And this new place likes you.
That makes two of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we also have a guest on Zoom, Mr. Martin Egblewugbe. He's an author, and the director of the Writers Project of Ghana. Of course, if you do listen to Citi FM, you probably would have heard his voice on a number of occasions as well. Martin, good morning, and you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join you on the show this morning.
All right. So, Martin, let me start with you. What are some of your recollections of Ama Ata Aidoo?
Well, let me begin this way. When I first heard the news yesterday, I was taken aback and I felt a bit sad. But on further reflection, I did understand that there's something to celebrate about Ama Ata Aidoo. She has done a great deal for African writing and also for me as a person. My recollections of her dates back probably about a decade or more, like maybe 15 or more years. That is when she began to take an interest in my writing. And so it was, it was from her reaching out, in different ways. And I must say that my first book, which was published outside the country, was done on her recommendation, So in that sense, I really owe her one. But beyond that, the organization which I run, the Writers Project of Ghana, has really benefited from her interest and her support. So many of the things that we do require that we get resource persons who are experienced and who have actually made their mark. And she was always available. She always made herself available. And that was an extremely important thing for us. When we are running programs and we ask her to join us, she does. One of the memories I have and I hold dear was in 2017 when we had just started the literary festival, Beja Literary Festival in Accra. She was the headline event along with the late poet Kobna Eyi Akwa. And because the two of them were friends, and that conversation was actually a very, very exciting conversation as they explored their own works and spoke about their life and times, And so my recollection of her is extremely fond. I feel that celebrations are in order. She's done very well for Ghanaian writing, both in terms of being there for people and also encouraging us to perform.
Okay, fantastic. We'll come back to you again, but let's talk to Anis. So what about you? I mean, I'm sure you go way back. If you can just tell us what she meant to you.
Right, okay. We the two of us had a very interesting relationship. I was teaching two of her books, Anoa and Dilemma of a Ghost at the Alphabetic Christian College.
Okay.
And for me, when I teach, I write about what it is that I teach. But it happened that at the time, she was at Brown University. And I would send my articles to one of my mates, who was also a professor there. He passed away, Professor Zizinho. And then they would share my work. And, and she had always wanted to meet me because I was really into her books. And I really wanted, okay, there we are. And I also really wanted to meet her because, she was a genius. Good. But it happened that I think there was a program that was to honor her at the Accra International Conference Center. So I went there to see her. Then when I saw her coming down the stairs with a walking stick, I rushed to hug her. And that was the first time that we met. And we've been brother and sister ever since.
Wow.
You know, and for me, I feel a lot disappointed because I had an open invitation to come and eat palm soup in the house, a tema. Okay. And I kept postponing it. The day I really wanted to go, I called her, and she told me, I need to say, maybe I'm over. We were playing him. I think was it wheel? What's that was it?
Wheelchair.
Wheelchair was about from. In the same son about from. And then, so that's the kind of relationship that you have. But you know something? There are people that you know on a very superficial level, and it stays that way. And there are people that you tend to know intimately, and right from the get, it's like we're family.
Yeah.
So it's we go back a long way. What I also like is her guts. You know, anytime I was with her, because of course my mother too is Fanti. I like to listen to her, the Fanti idioms, the proverbs, you know, and she takes the time to get you to understand exactly what she's saying, but she'll always put what she's saying in context, you know, and it was fantastic for me because that was like a learning experience. When we lose people like that, and it's like, who's going to replace them? You know, in the tradition of Ifo Sutherland, you know, these are two of the, and in fact, you know, when Apioko wrote the book, The Matriarch Verses, I compared her to those two, that, hey, you are stepping in those shoes, and you have to be very careful because these are powerful people that you've joined. There it is. So, you know, it's, but she lived her life. You remember what she said? And I wrote it here, that I was too much for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I was too much for a lot of people because I know who I am. And you can't stop me from expressing myself.
Yeah.
And when you look at those two novels, those two plays, the one that I really like is the Anoa, where she talks about the complicity of Africans themselves in the slave trade, that we tend to blame others too much.
Yeah.
But we should never forget the role that we played.
Played in it. Wow.
Now, Hannes, let's look at his, I mean, in terms of her literary works, you know, and academia, what have we lost? How will she be remembered?
You know, the great thing about writers is that it's difficult to lose them.
Yeah.
Because her work is there.
Lives
Her
on,
work speaks for her. You know, I would have been very disappointed had she not left anything. You know, it's the same with it for Sutherland too.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, when you want to read for pleasure, he's there. She's there to fulfill that gap. You know, these are the people that we really have to emulate. But the most important thing, though, is that we have to bring them into the reading culture of the young people in this country. That we've had some great people before. You know, frankly, now, if you look at our environment, it seems like there are no great people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's this problem here, there's this problem here, there's that corruption there, there's this other thing here, and it's very disappointing. It's tiring.
Yeah.
But then when you have a giant like her, you realize that there are people that you can emulate.
Yeah.
For me, what I feel sorry about is that I've lost a great mentor. You know, KB Asante was my mentor. He passed on. Ephraim Amu was my mentor. He passed on. Professor Nketia was my mentor. He passed on. My own headmaster, Francis Bartels, was a mentor. These were the giants, you know. So now, it's like we need to get young people to understand who these people are. And what Ghana means to them, and what Ghana should mean for them. I think that's the challenge now, that we have. So I'm glad we are doing a program like this, but it shouldn't stop. It's very important that we have young people to study these people, that they are the people that we can emulate. Because when you look around, it's something gets disappointing.
But where do
Who are
we
the great
start
people?
from? That's the issue now. Where do we start from? Who needs to start and from where?
Well, I will tell you this. I was teaching literature, like I told you, and the Cambridge literature. And there were aspects of black writers like Maya Angelou and the rest of them. And frankly, I recommended that she had to be part of the scheme of things. And also if for Sutherland. 2 years after that, they were teaching her books. So what I'm saying, for that aspect of our intellectual development for our young people is there. But it also has to be incorporated throughout a mainstream through education system. What I like about her is that her books are not difficult to understand.
Yeah.
You know, and it's fun. there's prose, there's poetry, there's a combination of both. And you can also see the sophistication of the translation of Fanti into English language. It's not everybody who can do that too.
Yeah.
We take things for granted. And in fact, I wish there's a piece that I have, I think I would like Apiko to read it. What she did was that she gave me an unpublished piece of work,
Okay.
which I published in my column. And it's here. And it would be great to have a woman read it. And if there's time, we'll see how that thing goes. And frankly, I felt honored about it because it had been published in the West. At least I want you to have this. I want you to publish it. And it was published. And I took it for granted. But now, the value is beginning to resonate through the system.
Now, you are an educationist. Do you see that as a country, we are raising these kind of women?
Again, you see, when you have geniuses like Ifo Sutherland and Ama Ata Aidoo, it's difficult to catch up to their expertise. But then, for what we do now with the literacy challenge, there are a lot of little kids.
Yeah.
Some come from Tamale, some come from Kumasi and so on. And it is there. She started writing about that age.
Yeah.
You know, I think she started writing, she took it for granted. She saw that her work was so good. It was published in the center page of a newspaper with her name taking the credit for it. And boom, she said, look, that's who I am. And from here, I'm going to take my own work seriously. You know how people don't like to take their work seriously? She did. You know, she did. And I like that because it's talking to us that we too should take our work seriously. You might not take your life seriously, but your work is there. You have to be as professional as possible.
So I want to ask Martin a question here. What was it, do you think, that drew her to younger people, new people coming into the space that was attractive to her to say, I want to mentor? What for you, I mean, being on the mentee side, what do you think it was that was Ama had that was attractive for her?
Well, it would be difficult for me to lay my finger on what exactly made her so passionate about young people, but that she was. And I think that in terms of propagating an authentic African voice, she wanted to ensure that this is something that continued. And, writing can be a very daunting and difficult task. And so for identifying people who are writing and giving them any sort of encouragement, it goes a long way in ensuring that they continue what they are doing. And so I feel that her understanding of the terrain and knowing that people really need a helping hand, a word of advice, etc., made her continue to do that. Because I'm very sure that if you take a look at all the young people who are writing and making have made significant steps currently, they will point at her as someone who really encouraged their writing, pointed them in this and that direction, and so on. I do know that she has very strong opinions about many things. I can't say that my opinions entirely align with hers, but this is also the strength of her intellect, that she's able to see people who may think differently and yet understand that they are worth pushing. The literary landscape really has been enriched by her passion, and I really want to admit that a lot of my progress has been due to her interests. I can't really identify what was the passion, why she was doing that for sure, but that she did it, I can testify.
Anis, what do you think it was, though?
What do you
think? Based on how you described her and everything else, and what do you think it was that drew her to try and mentor people and pull out gold from people?
It started off with her being a woman. You know how she quoted Kwiji Library? That educate a man and you get you or me. It's not enough. But educate a woman and you have a whole nation.
Yeah.
I think that was inspiring for her. But for me, the other aspect of her that I really liked was the fact that she's also a feminist. Feminist meaning that women need their due respect.
Yeah.
You know, if you have kids, if you have about 3 boys and 3 girls, those days, the chances are you let your boys go to school and not the girls. But I was keen on having my daughters meet her. You know, I have 3 girls. I have no boys, so I'm going to adopt you. You know, I have 3 girls.
I'm duly adopted.
So, you know, there was a party that we were invited to, and my children were there to meet her. And I said, look, these are the people that you need to emulate. Look at her strength, you know, her confidence, her ability to express herself, even if others don't think they want to hear it. And I like what she said. She said, look, I'm too much for everybody, you know, and sometimes we tend to be a little too modest.
Yeah.
You know, we tend to be a little too modest. And in the process, we hide our gifts.
Yeah.
It's very predominant in this culture.
It is.
You know, I mean, when I was teaching in the U.S., a program, Gifted Talent Education, modesty was not a big deal. You know, if you've done it, flaunt it.
You've done it, yeah.
Yeah. You know, but here, Nyami Wohoni at the end, it really does a lot to really dampen our spirits, even though we can do much better than that. So that's how I see her.
Okay.
That she's courageous. And I'll tell you this. Can you imagine being in the United States, teaching at Brown University, and holding Africans responsible for the slave trade? How many people do that?
Yeah.
You know, we all want to be very, circumspect, to use that kind of word, and not try to offend anybody. I would say, my friend, I'm not here for that.
Yeah.
Let's call a spade a spade. And even when she talks in historical terms, the bond of the 1844 bond, it's our grandfathers and who signed it. Why did they have to do all that? You know, so when she brings in the historical aspect and stuff that really embolden us, that like Yasantua, you know, these are the, and they are women. Men, when men become cowardly, invariably, it takes a strong woman to take their place. And the same with the first Sutherland, you know. So again, back to your question again, we can't put these great people on the back burner. They have to be out there. They have to shine. They have to sparkle. Their work has to dazzle us so that we see that there are people that we can emulate. And like I said earlier, when you look now, I mean, considering my age, you know, I'm saying, who are the kids supposed to emulate? I'm serious about this. You know, so when we lose her, we've lost her in body, but we should not lose her in spirit. We need to bring her back in. That these are the people that we want to be like. These are role models, powerful role models for women and for men.
So we'll take a look at some of her feminism, you know, speeches in a video. But before we do that, quickly, talking about who are the young girls going to be emulating now. You know, how do we position ourselves, you know, in terms of mentorship for young women and speaking out, you know, from where we come? It looks like naturally we are timid people, I dare say, but the girl child is even worse, because we believe that it's a man world, so man hours, man everything, man all that. How do we begin to change this? Now she's no more, but how do we make sure that beyond her literary works, her memory lives on, her principles live on, what she stood for live on through other women?
Good question. There was another program that she did, and I was with her at the Kojo Yankers University. I mean,
AUCC.
Yeah, right. There's a place for her, some kind of writers guild. And she was there. I think it was done in her honor. Something like that has to be perpetuated. In fact, now I'm going there to see exactly how it's happening and how we can all lend support. That's one. We also have to begin to look at universities. For example, if you look at Ama Ata Aidoo, Ifo Sutherland, and so on, and their effect in the drama of University of Ghana, how are we doing now? And especially also with Professor Nketia. Professor Nketia adored her so much. He said, when Ama Ata Aidoo's place came out, I said, my own children were part of it. He said, that's how connected I am to her. You know, so again, that's a good question now. we really need to make an effort to identify the role models for this country.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not talking about just the politicians. So, they've had their say.
Yeah.
My time, kakra. Let's begin to look at some other thinkers in the system, people that we can really emulate in a very substantial and not superficial way.
Yeah.
You know, so, sometimes a crisis like this provides opportunities. We've lost this person, but her work is there. Her determination is there. Her courage is there. How do we begin to persevere and follow her in the tracks that she laid for us? That is it. That's our mission. And CTFM, as I'm not what we can do so we can all be part of it.
Yeah.
All
right, and so the onus lies on all of us. You know, we can't just let them go in futility. Their works are there. We really need to bring life to whatever they stood for. Let's now take a look at some of the videos.
My point is that when a woman has been socialized into, I don't want to use the word oppressed, right? But when a woman has been put under pressure, when she's been socialized into a certain space and she is being that woman in that space, that doesn't mean that, you know, that's all there is to her. My problem with seeing African women, you know, the quintessentially world oppressed and so on and so forth, is that it removes any agency from African women, as if we are just there, you know, to be oppressed, to make babies. And mind you, if you don't mind my saying it, excuse me, I mean, it's not all African societies that practice female genital mutilation. And Africa is not the only place where it is done.
It happens in the Middle East as well.
Yes,
okay, so you have said that you're very averse to this Western perception that the African
world
female...
perception.
World perception that the African female is a downtrodden wretch. You're also seen as the perhaps paramount African feminist. Do you describe yourself as a feminist?
I am a feminist, yeah.
And you don't think that's a bit of a loaded term that's associated with the 1970s women's liberation movement, women burning their bras in Western capitals?
So what if they were burning their bras? I mean, the feminists, if you say that, you know, a feminist is just somebody, not necessarily a woman, who believes in the potential of women to get to the highest possible level of development, you know, given the facilities a society makes available. I mean, just as any man. And being a feminist is not necessarily being a woman feminist. Feminism is an ideology, like socialism, like Pan-Africanism. So, a man too can be a feminist.
Do you believe then that feminism is feminism regardless of wherever you live in the world, whether it's Norway or Nigeria, or do you believe that there is an African feminism more strongly rooted in the social traditions and culture of these countries?
I certainly do believe, you know, it is...
What, that there is an African feminism?
Well, I mean, I think there is an African feminism that does not go around describing itself as an African feminism. What I'm trying to say is that feminism is an ideology, an ideology, and it depends how it is formulated or how it is negotiated, depends upon.
Yes, and this is the woman we are celebrating. You know, one woman who is not afraid to speak her mind, who is not afraid to let her principles, her ideals and ideologies be known to the world. Really, it doesn't matter what you believe in, but this is what I believe in, and I speak to this.
So do I.
No,
I told you.
Yeah.
I made sure that my daughters saw her in the flesh and interact with her. You know, it will be very interesting for them to see this again, so that it will reawaken the purpose for which you met in the first place.
Yeah.
Because, you know, okay, Nayan Kolo,
No, but before David comes in, you know, sometimes when people are alive, you know, you probably may not pay much attention to what they say until they are no more, and you go back to listen to the wisdom that they were speaking. And probably that is why we say that in our part of the world, we honor the dead, you know, because it looks like when people die, we now take time to look at who they really were, what did they say and all that. Watching this video again is giving me personally some level of, you know, strength, courage. Speak up. It doesn't matter if you're the only person who believes in your principles.
One is
in fact, it's better if you are the only person who believes in your principle, because others will emulate you. That's how you develop a genius.
Yes.
You know, normally, you have to have what they call good trouble.
Yeah.
You know, you are going against the grain. The grain is what's been accepted as a social norm, but it doesn't make sense. So how do you go against it? And it has to be good trouble. And that's how you make your mark.
Exactly.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah. You just don't need to go around explaining yourself, justifying yourself and all that. This is me means this is me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, like what she said, she defined a feminist.
Yeah.
Someone who believes that women can be anything they set their mind to.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be a woman.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I've always described myself as a feminist. Because I believe in the principles.
There's also something that she said, that women have to be seen developing agencies for themselves.
Yes.
You know, I teach a course in the Accra College of Medicine. And in one of our graduation ceremonies, there were 8 graduates, 7 were women.
Whoa.
Only one man.
Was man.
Yeah, because the men at that point didn't seem to have the gut. They started to finish it. But it was the women who did that. So what I'm saying, the terrain is there. Terrain is there. The exposure is there. What Ama Ata Aidoo and Ifo Sutherland and the rest of them do is that they confirm exactly where we need to go. Because they are the embodiment of courage, the perseverance, and forming an agency that's truly representative of who they are as a woman.
Fantastic. As we wrap this up, Martin, any final thoughts? Just 30 seconds.
Yes. What I would just like to say that the best way of preserving her legacy is to go and be familiar with her work. And also, this is very important for all of us to start to begin to think of ourselves as a reading nation. And so her books are out there. I know there was a reprint a year or so ago. Everybody should, I think, get her work, read it, and become familiar with what I would say is one of the greatest writers coming from Ghana in the past century.
All right, fantastic. Anis, thank you. Thank you. We've had and I'm going to look for everything on her. Seriously. Watching the BBC interview, I'm like, I need some of that. And my daughter needs some of that.
This is the first time I've seen this particular interview.
No, I haven't seen it before.
And I'm emboldened by it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I like it.
Yeah.
And the boys, you have a date with the boys?
I'll be traveling to you. I will let you know when.
Charlie, we are solving our family issues here.
And why not? And why not?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
she just said something in her interview that it looks like we just see ourselves as very calm, very modest, very, you know, and I mean, women are not just here for procreation. Women are not just here to cook food, you know. We are the agents of change in society, and we really need to live up to that expectation and cause that change that we talk about.
And you know, that was the caliber of person who was Minister of Education.
Yes.
But you know, she left after 18 months or so because she didn't see herself play the role the way she wanted it. So she quit.
Enough said. Yeah, some people want to be quote unquote Mugabe's in the role, even if the role doesn't fit you anymore. Well, we'll take a quick break. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you very much, Anis, for joining us this morning on this conversation about the Professor Ama Ata Aidoo.